Imagine you find yourself witnessing a life or death struggle in your own neighborhood. A massive python has attacked Luna, a brave German shepherd mother fiercely protecting her puppies. The tension escalates with each passing second. Who will step up to help her? And what extraordinary events will unfold next? Jake wiped his brow as a cool summer breeze drifted through the quiet suburban street. The rhythmic clatter of trash cans and the steady hum of his truck engine were the only sounds punctuating the stillness of the evening. It was the last stop on his route, and as always, he cherished these moments of solitude. The streetlights cast a warm orange glow, highlighting the neatly trimmed lawns and the silent houses, their occupants likely winding down for the night. He lingered for a moment longer, his gaze drifting towards the large backyard of a familiar house. Luna, a German shepherd mother he had grown fond of over the months, lived there. Jake often caught glimpses of her playing with her puppies in the yard during his early morning shifts. The thought of her pups brought a smile to his face. Just as he was about to step back into his truck, a sound pierced the night. It was faint at first, almost lost in the rustling of leaves, but unmistakable, a low, distressed whimper. Jake froze, straining his ears. The noise came again, louder this time, carrying with it an edge of pain and fear. It was coming from the direction of Luna's yard. Dropping his gloves, Jake moved quickly but cautiously towards the sound. His boots crunched against the gravel path, the faint noise amplified in the silence. As he approached the yard's edge, the whimpering grew sharper, more desperate. He hesitated for a moment before stepping into the shadows of the backyard. What he saw stopped him cold. Luna, her powerful body now rendered helpless, was wrapped in the thick, coiling body of a massive python. The snake's scales shimmered faintly under the dim glow of a nearby light, its powerful muscles constricting tighter with every breath the dog tried to take. Luna's eyes locked onto Jake, wide with a mix of terror and pleading. Jake's pulse quickened as he processed the scene. He had seen snakes before, small ones slithering through gardens or under trash bins, but nothing like this. This python was massive, its girth larger than his forearm, its length stretching further than he could see in the dim light. His instinct was to rush forward and pull the snake away, but his feet stayed rooted. He knew enough to recognize the danger. A creature of this size could kill not just Luna, but a person too. He took a shaky breath, forcing himself to think. "Luna," he whispered, his voice trembling. She whimpered in response, a sound so filled with pain it tore at his chest. He scanned the yard, his eyes falling on a hose coiled near the fence. Maybe water could distract it. But before he could act, a movement in the shadows caught his eye. Near the corner of the yard, a cluster of small shapes huddled together. Huddled together, Luna's puppies were a small, trembling cluster. Jake's heart sank. The stakes were far higher than he had initially grasped. His mind raced desperately, weighing his options, while the sounds of Luna's distress filled the night air. For the first time in a long while, he felt utterly powerless. Jake's mind spun as he stood frozen in Luna's backyard, the desperate cries of the German shepherd pulling him from his daze. He couldn't bear to see her suffer like this. His eyes darted between the massive python, its scales gleaming menacingly, and Luna's litter of puppies huddled in the far corner of the yard. The puppies trembled, their small forms barely visible in the dim light cast by the porch. Every instinct in Jake screamed for him to act, but he had no idea how to confront something so dangerous, so primal. He moved cautiously toward the garden, hose lying coiled near the fence. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. His fingers fumbled as he turned the nozzle, water sputtering before a steady stream flowed. Jake aimed the hose at the python, hoping the cold water might startle it, enough to loosen its deadly grip. The spray hit the snake's glistening scales, droplets reflecting the weak glow of the porch light. For a brief moment, the python shifted slightly, its coils slackening ever so slightly. "Come on," Jake muttered under his breath, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. But just as he thought his makeshift plan might work, the python's body tensed, its massive muscles coiling even tighter around Luna, eliciting a sharp yelp of pain from her. Jake's chest tightened with a crushing sense of dread as he realized he might be inadvertently making things worse. He dropped the hose, his hands shaking uncontrollably, and stepped back. He pulled his phone from his pocket, his fingers trembling as he dialed emergency services. The operator's calm voice was a stark contrast to the chaotic scene unfolding in the yard. "There's a dog," Jake stammered, glancing at Luna's weakening form. "A big snake. It's wrapped around her. I don't know what to do." The operator reassured him that help was on the way, but every second stretched into an agonizing eternity. Jake's eyes darted back to the puppies. They were barely old enough to walk, their tiny bodies pressed together for warmth and safety. One of them let out a soft, plaintive whimper, and Jake felt a surge of urgent protectiveness. If the python turned its attention to them, it would be a complete disaster. He grabbed a nearby broom, thinking he might be able to gently nudge the puppies closer to the safety of the house. But as he approached, Luna growled weakly, her maternal instinct overriding her pain. Even in her dire state, she was fiercely protecting them. Okay, Jake murmured, retreating a step. "I won't get too close." He could feel the immense weight of the situation pressing down on him. He wasn't trained for this. He wasn't a hero, but he couldn't simply stand by and do nothing. The distant sound of approaching sirens brought a flicker of hope. Jake glanced toward the street, willing the responders to arrive faster. He knew time was running out for Luna. Her breaths were labored now, her struggles growing weaker with each passing moment. Jake clenched his fists, frustration and helplessness washing over him as he waited, a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. He crouched down, locking eyes with Luna. "Hold on," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Help is coming. Just hold on." Her eyes flickered, a mix of fear and unwavering trust. Meeting his gaze in that moment, Jake realized that saving her wasn't just about skill or strength. It was about not giving up, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The sound of Luna's strained breathing filled the quiet night, a harsh, ragged rhythm that underscored the urgency of the situation. Jake anxiously scanned the yard for any sign of help, his eyes darting from Luna to the surrounding shadows. The sirens that had felt so close a moment ago seemed to stretch endlessly in the distance, each passing second an agonizing eternity. He clenched his fists, willing himself to stay calm, to maintain a semblance of control in the face of overwhelming fear. Luna's body trembled under the crushing force of the python's coils, her eyes locking onto his again, pleading, a silent cry for help. A wave of helplessness washed over him, threatening to drown him in despair, but he knew giving up wasn't an option. A door creaked open nearby, followed by hurried footsteps. Jake turned to see one of the neighbors, an elderly woman named Carol, rushing toward him with a flashlight in hand. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice shaking as she took in the horrifying scene, her flashlight beam illuminating the terrifying tableau. Jake quickly explained, his words tumbling, out in a rush, a frantic account of the unfolding drama. Carol, a retired veterinarian, immediately assessed the situation with a calmness Jake envied, her professional instincts kicking in despite the shock. "We need to keep the snake distracted until help arrives," she said, her tone firm despite the fear flickering in her eyes. "Don't make any sudden moves. It's stressed, and that makes it unpredictable." More lights began flickering on in the surrounding houses, and soon other neighbors joined them, drawn by the commotion and the primal fear of the unknown. Some stood frozen at the edge of the yard, whispering nervously among themselves, while a few, spurred by Carol's instructions, began gathering tools and supplies. One man handed Jake a sturdy rake, while another brought a long wooden pole. "We'll keep our distance," Carol instructed, "but we need to be ready if it tries to move toward the puppies." Jake glanced at the small cluster of puppies, still huddled in the corner, their tiny forms pressed together for comfort. One of them let out a soft, plaintive whimper, and Luna growled weakly in response, her protective instincts refusing to fade despite her dire state. Jake felt a surge of renewed determination. He had to do something more than just wait. Gripping the rake tightly, he positioned himself closer to Luna, ready to act if the python made any sudden moves. The python, sensing the growing commotion, adjusted its position slightly, its head lifting to survey the gathered humans. Its unblinking eyes gleamed in the flashlight beams, a cold and calculating stare that sent a shiver down Jake's spine. "Stay calm," Carol reminded everyone, her voice low and steady. "Don't provoke it." Just as the tension threatened to become unbearable, the distant wail of sirens grew louder, drawing closer by the second. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the group, though no one dared to lower their guard. The animal control vehicle pulled up to the curb, its flashing lights cutting through the darkness, and two uniformed officers stepped out, their movements swift and purposeful. They carried specialized equipment, poles with loops, a large bag, and thick gloves designed for handling dangerous reptiles. The officers approached carefully, their calm professionalism reassuring everyone present. One of them spoke quietly to Carol, quickly gathering details about the situation. "We'll need to act fast," he said, glancing at Luna. "She's running out of time." Jake stepped back, his grip on the rake loosening as the officers took over, their expertise a beacon of hope in the tense, shadowed yard. As the animal control officers took over, Jake felt a mix of relief and guilt, wishing he could have done more. Still, he stayed close, ready to assist if needed, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs as he watched the professionals begin their delicate work. The air was heavy with tension, thick with the unspoken fear and the urgent need for swift action as the animal control officers moved into position. Every step they took was measured, their calm demeanor masking the urgency of the situation. One officer, a tall man with a steady gaze, held a pole with a loop at the end, his grip firm and unwavering. His partner, a woman with quick reflexes and sharp focus, carried a long stick designed to guide the python's movements, her eyes constantly scanning the scene. Carol stood nearby, providing details about Luna's condition and urging the neighbors to stay back, her voice a low, steady murmur in the tense silence. Jake couldn't tear his eyes away from Luna, her breathing shallow, her body limp but still trembling under the python's grip, a testament to the brutal struggle she had endured. "Careful," the male officer murmured, his voice barely audible, a hushed warning in the still night. "We need to loosen the coils gradually. If it feels threatened, it could constrict further." His partner nodded, her movements precise and deliberate as she edged closer to the snake's head, her focus unwavering. Jake held his breath, the rake still clutched in his hands, unsure if he should stay ready or get out of the way. His mind a whirlwind of conflicting impulses, the python's head lifted slightly, its forked tongue flicking in and out as it sensed the disturbance, its cold reptilian eyes scanning the crowd. The officer with the loophole moved slowly, positioning it just behind the snake's head with a practiced motion. He slipped the loop over the python's neck and tightened it gently, his movements fluid and efficient. The snake reacted instantly, its powerful body rippling as it tried to twist free, its muscles coiling and uncoiling, in a desperate attempt to escape. Luna whimpered, her eyes fluttering open briefly before closing again, her strength waning. Jake took an involuntary step forward, his instincts screaming at him to help, to intervene, but Carol placed a firm hand on his shoulder, her grip surprisingly strong. "Trust them," she whispered, her voice a reassuring presence in the chaos. "They know what they're doing." Her words didn't ease the tight knot in his chest, but he nodded, forcing himself to stay put, to trust in the professionals. The female officer used her stick to nudge the python's body, carefully unwinding the first coil, her movements slow and deliberate to avoid startling the snake. It was a painstaking process, each movement a delicate dance between control and caution. The neighbors watched in intense silence, some clutching each other for support, their faces etched with worry. The puppies, sensing the danger, let out faint cries that seemed to echo in the still night. their small voices a fragile counterpoint to the tense silence. Jake glanced at them, his heart breaking at their fear, but his focus remained on Luna, his gaze fixed on her labored breathing. As the second coil loosened, the python thrashed, nearly slipping free from the loop, its powerful body writhing with renewed vigor. The officer tightened his grip, his muscles straining as he held the snake in place, his face flushed with exertion. "Almost there," he muttered, beads of sweat forming on his forehead, a testament to the physical and mental strain. His partner worked quickly, her hands steady as she unwound the final coil, her movements precise and efficient. Finally, with one last effort, the python was completely unwrapped from Luna, its massive body freed from its deadly grip. The male officer pulled it back, guiding its writhing body into the large bag his partner held open, their movements a well-rehearsed ballet of control. The moment the snake was secured, a collective sigh of relief swept through the yard, a wave of emotion that washed over everyone present. Jake dropped the rake, his hands trembling with residual adrenaline, and rushed to Luna's side. She was still breathing, though barely. Her eyes fluttered open again, meeting Jake's for a fleeting moment, a silent acknowledgement of their shared ordeal. "She's alive," he said, his voice breaking with emotion, a mixture of relief and disbelief. The officers nodded, already discussing their next steps for the python's relocation, their professionalism unwavering. Carol knelt beside Luna, her experienced hands gently examining the dog's injuries. Carol knelt beside Jake, gently checking Luna's injuries, her touch practiced and reassuring. Jake stroked Luna's head softly, whispering, "You're safe now. It's over." The quiet hum of the animal clinic filled the room, a sterile, clinical sound that nonetheless offered a sense of sanctuary. Jake sat on a cold plastic chair, his hands still trembling from the night's events, the adrenaline slowly ebbing away, leaving behind a lingering sense of unease. Luna lay on a steel examination table, her chest rising and falling with shallow, labored breaths, a stark reminder of the ordeal she had endured. The veterinarian worked carefully, cleaning the wounds, left by the python's crushing grip, her movements precise and efficient. Jake watched every movement, his heart heavy with worry, his gaze fixed on Luna's fragile form. Luna had survived, but the ordeal had left her weak, her body bearing the scars of a fight that had nearly taken her life. The puppies, now safe and nestled in a corner of the room, let out occasional whimpers, their tiny voices a poignant reminder of what Luna had fought so hard to protect, the innocent lives she had risked everything for. Jake leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his posture tense and anxious as he glanced at the puppies. Despite the fear and exhaustion etched on his face, there was a spark of determination in his eyes, a newfound resolve. "She's a fighter," the vet said softly, breaking the silence that had settled over the room, her voice filled with admiration. "It's incredible she held on this long. Most dogs wouldn't have survived." Jake nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat, his eyes welling with unshed tears. He had seen the raw strength and determination in Luna's eyes, even as she faced what seemed like certain death, her unwavering gaze a testament to her courage. She wasn't just a fighter, she was a protector, a mother who would stop at nothing to safeguard her young. Carol entered the room, carrying a tray of water and food for the puppies, her movements gentle and deliberate. She placed it down gently, her hands steady despite the long night, her presence a calming influence in the sterile environment. "They're going to be okay too," she said, offering Jake a reassuring smile, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "You did good, Jake. If you hadn't been there, none of this would have ended the way it did." He shook his head, his gaze dropping to the floor, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't do enough. If the team hadn't come in time, she wouldn't have made it." Carol crouched beside him, her voice firm, yet kind, her words a gentle rebuke. "You cared enough to act. That's what mattered. You saved her because you didn't give up, even when you were scared. That's more than most people would do." Her words hung in the air, a quiet truth that Jake wasn't ready to accept fully, his self-doubt a heavy burden. The puppies began to move, their tiny paws pattering against the tiled floor as they ventured closer to Luna, their instincts drawing them to their mother's side. One by one, they nestled against her side, their soft bodies providing warmth and comfort, their presence a silent reassurance. Luna opened her eyes briefly, her gaze flickering toward her puppies before closing again, her expression serene and peaceful. It was a small moment, but it filled the room with a sense of peace, a quiet affirmation of the bond between mother and child. Jake let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, the tension finally releasing its grip on his body. The weight of the night began to lift, replaced by a quiet resolve, a newfound sense of purpose. He looked at Carol, his voice steady for the first time, his words filled with conviction. I want to do more, not just for Luna, but for others like her. I want to help. Carol smiled, her expression warm and encouraging, her eyes filled with pride. Then you should. This isn't the end, Jake. It's just the beginning. As he watched over Luna and her puppies, Jake felt something shift inside him, a profound transformation. He had come to the yard that night as an observer, someone on the outside looking in, a passive witness to the unfolding drama. Now he felt a connection, not just to Luna and her family, but to something greater, a sense of belonging to a community bound by compassion and courage. It wasn't just about saving one life. It was about making a difference, one act of courage at a time, one act of kindness at a time. The sun rose slowly over the suburban neighborhood, casting a warm glow across the tidy yards and quiet streets, painting the scene in hues of gold and amber. Jake stood in the yard where it had all begun, his hands resting on the fence as he watched Luna move gingerly through the grass, her steps slow and deliberate. Her body was still recovering from the injuries, but her tail wagged with quiet determination, a silent affirmation of her resilience. The puppies darted around her, full of energy and oblivious to the danger they had narrowly escaped, their soft yips and playful tumbles filling the air, a stark contrast to the tension of that harrowing night. Jake felt a strange mix of emotions as he watched them, a complex tapestry of relief that they were safe, pride in what the community had accomplished, and a lingering sense of awe at Luna's resilience. Despite her scars, both physical and emotional, she had not once faltered in her role as a protector, her unwavering devotion a testament to her maternal love. He marveled at her strength, the quiet kind that didn't demand recognition, but commanded respect, the kind that simply endured. Carol appeared beside him, carrying a tray of water and treats for the dogs, her presence a comforting reminder of the community's support. She's doing remarkably well, she said, setting the tray down near the fence, her voice filled with admiration. Her wounds are healing faster than I expected. She's tougher than she looks. Jake smiled faintly, his gaze never leaving Luna, his eyes filled with affection. She's more than tough, she's extraordinary. The two of them stood in silence for a moment, watching as one of the puppies climbed over Luna's paw, only to tumble down and try again, its persistence a reflection of its mother's spirit. You know, Carol began, her voice thoughtful, her words a gentle nudge towards introspection. What happened here last night? What happened here brought out something special in everyone. You, the neighbors, even her, Carol continued, her voice thoughtful, her eyes reflecting the dawn's soft light. It's not just about survival. It's about connection, about what we do when we're called to act, when we're faced with something that demands our courage. Jake nodded, her words resonating deeply within him, stirring something he hadn't quite articulated to himself. He had spent so much of his life on the fringes, observing rather than participating, a silent spectator in the theatre of life. But that night had changed something fundamental within him. He had stepped into the fray, faced his fears, and found a part of himself he hadn't known was there, a wellspring of courage and compassion. It wasn't about being a hero, about grand gestures and dramatic feats. It was about doing what needed to be done, even when it was hard, even when fear threatened to paralyze him. As the morning light grew brighter, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, more neighbors began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the quiet hum of activity and the shared sense of relief. Some brought toys for the puppies, their bright colors a cheerful contrast to the night's darkness, while others carried coffee and breakfast for Jake and Carol, their gestures of kindness a tangible expression of community. The atmosphere was one of quiet celebration, a shared acknowledgement of what they had all overcome together, a collective sigh of relief that echoed through the quiet streets. Children laughed as they played with the puppies, their joy contagious, their innocent exuberance a balm to the lingering tension. Jake took a sip of the coffee handed to him by a kind-faced neighbor, his eyes scanning the scene, taking in the tableau of community and connection. It wasn't just Luna who had been changed by the events of that night. The entire neighborhood seemed different, more connected, more alive. The fences that once symbolized separation, the invisible boundaries that kept people apart, now felt like lines to be crossed, not barriers to hide behind, invitations to connection rather than walls of isolation. As Luna lay down in the grass, her puppies snuggling against her side, their soft bodies a comforting presence, Jake felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet contentment that settled over him like a warm blanket. He knew this wasn't the end of her story or his. It was the beginning of something bigger, a new chapter in their lives. He had already taken the first step by volunteering at the local animal shelter, driven by a newfound purpose, a desire to make a difference. And now, standing here with his neighbors, he realized that small acts of courage, when shared, could ripple outward in ways he had never imagined, creating a wave of compassion that touched every corner of their community. Looking at Luna and her puppies, their bond a testament to the power of maternal love, Jake allowed himself to smile fully for the first time in what felt like years, his heart overflowing with gratitude and admiration. "You did good, girl," he whispered under his breath, his voice thick with emotion. "We all did. Thank you so much for watching this story. We truly appreciate your time and support, and we hope it inspired or touched you in some way, that it resonated with your own experiences and beliefs. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps us reach more people who might enjoy stories like this, who might find solace or inspiration in these tales of courage and resilience. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update, so you can stay connected with our community. We're always bringing you heartfelt, impactful stories that celebrate courage, resilience, and connection. Stories that remind us of the power of human spirit and the strength of community. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to share more amazing stories with you. Stories that will touch your heart and inspire your soul. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next adventure, in the next chapter of our shared journey.